The mini Nintendo consoles are huge. Not literally, but they've been huge sellers. And even though mini consoles aren't a new thing, they never really had the same quality and appeal as the official NES and Super Nintendo minis. The NES mini was supposed to be a limited run, but due to insanely high demand, Nintendo is doing a re-release. And they've partnered with Shueisha in Japan to create a gold variant for Shonen Jump's 50th anniversary. And this is full of Famicom games based on manga that were in Shonen Jump. Unfortunately, the way that licensing has been handled in the past, it is very unlikely that this thing will leave Japan. Now, I'm not going to give a detailed history of Shonen Jump because I have a lot of games to get through, and I'm sure if you're watching this, you're kind of familiar with it already. But for those of you who don't know, it's a collection of manga by various artists released weekly since 1968. Shonen Jump is responsible for the most popular manga and anime series in the world like Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. We even got a monthly version in the US starting in 2003 and lasting until 2012 when it went fully digital. Now that you have a little bit of context, the Gold Famicom Mini contains 18 games based on 12 manga series and 2 games that incorporate multiple series. I'm breaking this up into 3 parts since there are so many games, and since they're all in Japanese, some of the ones that I'm showing today will have an English patch. Ankoko Shinwa, Yamato Takaro Densetsu is based on Ankoko Shinwa, or Dark Myth. It's a short manga from 1976 with 7 chapters and was adapted into a 2-episode OVA in 1990. I hadn't heard of the series prior to researching for this video, but the OVA was released in English in '96 by Manga Entertainment. And if you were familiar with Manga Entertainment in the 90s, you know what to expect.
Look, half his head's missing!
It's somewhat of a psychological horror manga dealing with a bit of mythology. The god of darkness, Susa no Ao, not to be confused with Susanoo, is about to awaken and he must be stopped. The game, released in 1989, is a point-and-click spiced up with 2D boss battles. This means that playing in Japanese is impossible if you don't understand it. The game looks alright for what it is, and I'm sure if you enjoyed the manga or the apparently awful anime, you might like it. From what I can tell, it does follow the story, and there's really no reason for it not to, as it was released over a decade after the manga ended. The music during the story part sounds a bit mysterious, which fits, and the boss battle theme is not bad. The boss battles are actually pretty enjoyable, and your character powers up as the game progresses. If the segments in between bosses weren't so boring, it might be a decent game. I mean, it still might be decent. I've never read the manga or seen the anime, so I can't really judge it. Captain Tsubasa is a series about soccer set in a world where everyone's eyes are afraid of each other. Seriously, these characters can probably hear themselves blink. It's a long-running series with several manga, anime, OVA, and movie adaptations, beginning with the original manga in 1981, and currently airing a new anime series for the first time since 2002. The story follows Tsubasa Ozora as he plays soccer. I'm sure there's more to it, but I'm not really a sports guy, so I'll just leave it at that. So there's actually a pair of games on the Gold Famicom, Captain Tsubasa and Volume 2, Super Striker, and they don't play like you'd expect. They incorporate elements of turn-based RPGs where you'll run the ball until being confronted by an opposing player, or you can choose to stop and pick an option like pass, shoot, punch, guts. The first one was actually released in the US as Tecmo Cup soccer game, and since this was the early 90s, it was heavily altered to be more relatable to a Western audience. For example, the dirt-faced Tsubasa was changed to Hitler's wet dream. The games look really good, and the parts that show the characters running or in action poses definitely reflect the source material, maybe a little too well. I'd say the first one actually looks a bit better in some places, but the sequel definitely improved on the gameplay. Instead of running through an empty field, you can actually see the other players, which is kind of important when playing soccer, right? And while I'm on the topic of graphics, the characters in the US version look like a parody of Americans you see in anime when the Japanese team faces a foreign team. Check it out if you're a fan of the series, or you like soccer but you're not a fan of traditional type soccer games. I hope you like Akira Toriyama because that's who the rest of the video is about. Being a massive success in Japan and later the world, the Dragon Ball franchise has 8 total games on the Famicom, and the Gold Famicom Mini includes 3 of them. I already talked about Shenron no Nazo, or Dragon Power in the West, and Gokuden in my 8-bit Dragon Ball games video, so click up in the corner or the link in the description to hear more about those. The first one is a top-down action game except during boss fights and covers the first arc of the series. Dragon Ball 3 Gokuden combines elements of a board game and those weird card game RPGs that were apparently big in Japan on the NES and Super NES days, and it covers the entire series. A game I haven't covered before is Dragon Ball Z Kyoshu Saiyajin. It's another card RPG, but the board is a big grid instead of a path like in Gokuden. You start off playing as both Goku and Piccolo and play out the events of the anime. Depending on which cards you and the enemy pick, the attacks will play out, and I always enjoyed watching these. On the Super Famicom anyway. These look pretty rough in 8-bit. The game only goes up to the end of the Saiyan saga, so to pad it out, Garlic Jr. is one of the plot points. Once Vegeta is beaten, you get a password for each character, which I assume carries over their stats to the next game. There's even an after credit scene included almost 20 years before every movie had to have one. The final game I'm going to talk about is the only one on the Gold Famicom that was actually a game before it was a manga. It also really deserves its own video, but here we go. Dragon Quest was released on the Famicom in 1986 and really kicked off Japan's RPG craze. You thought Final Fantasy was the granddaddy of JRPGs? Nah. Without Dragon Quest, there would be no Final Fantasy. That's an actual fact. Square didn't even think RPGs could sell until Dragon Quest came out and blew up. Dragon Quest is as standard as JRPGs can get. There's HP, MP, EXP, and tons of dialogue. You have to save a princess from the Dragon Lord, but despite being a very early RPG, Dragon Quest throws in the twist of being able to side with the enemy instead of fighting him. If you do, the game just kinda ends, but it does give you the choice. The Dragon Quest series is an enduring part of gaming history and still popular today. The American release titled Dragon Warrior was updated and changed a bit, but the biggest changes came in the art direction. All of the manga-style characters were changed to a more traditional Western fantasy types. This was done for the box art, instruction booklet, and all promotional materials. The reason this game is on the Gold Famicom is because in 1989, a manga adaptation called Dragon Quest Dino Daiboken started running in Shonen Jump and lasted for 349 chapters. Even though the game's art was designed by Akira Toriyama, obviously, the manga was not. I wish I could talk about the Dragon Quest series more, but these games are huge and there's a lot of them. Maybe in a future video. Probably not. We'll see. Alright, that was it for part 1. We covered 7 out of 20 games on the Gold Famicom Mini. If you like this video, like, subscribe, follow us at CrashLove Gaming on all social media, and check out our new podcast in the description. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you for part 2.